All right, so today we're diving into the world of the Malta gaming license. It seems like it's been popping up more and more. I've seen a lot of online casinos mentioning it lately, and you've brought us a ton of articles and info on it. So what's the big deal with this license?
Well, when people think about Malta, they usually picture, beautiful beaches, the Mediterranean sun, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. I guess most people don't think of it as like a gaming hub.
Exactly. But Malta has a really strong economy driven by things like finance, gaming, tourism, and even shipping. And that, combined with their forward-thinking approach to regulation, has made them a real powerhouse in online gaming.
That's interesting. So when did this all begin? When did they get into the online gaming world?
It all started back in 2001 when they established the Malta Gaming Authority, the MGA. They were one of the first countries to specifically regulate online gambling. They were real pioneers, and it's really given them a leading position in the field.
Wow. So they've had over 2 decades to refine their approach.
Yeah, and they haven't just sat back. They've constantly adapted and evolved their regulations over the years. Joining the EU in 2004 was a big step, and then they did some major reforms, which culminated in a new Gaming Act in 2018.
I see. So was this 2018 act like a response to the changes in the online gaming industry itself?
They simplified the licensing process and made it more appealing for operators to set up shop in Malta.
And it sounds like that's been a pretty successful strategy. I mean, we've seen them overseeing a huge chunk of the global virtual casino market.
Yeah, absolutely. They've really cultivated this thriving ecosystem for the industry. In fact, in the first half of 2023 alone, the gaming industry contributed something like 9.5% of Malta's total gross value added.
Wow, that's a big chunk. So let's get into the licenses themselves. What types of licenses does the MGA actually offer?
Well, they mainly offer 2 types. B2B licenses, which are for companies that provide software and services to other gaming companies, and then B2C licenses for the operators that directly serve players.
Mm-hmm. So like a company that develops casino software would need a B2B license, and then an online casino itself would need a B2C.
Yeah, exactly. And each of these licenses covers 4 different game categories: casino games, sports betting, player versus player games, and then what they call controlled skill games.
So I imagine that flexibility is pretty attractive to operators, right?
Yeah.
I mean, can they expand into different categories with the same license?
Absolutely. An online casino with a B2C license could easily add sports betting without having to get a whole new license.
That makes sense. So we're starting to see why Malta is so attractive, but let's get down to the financial side of things. What are the costs involved in getting one of these licenses?
Well, there's a few things to consider. First off, there's an application fee, which is non-refundable. That's €5,000. And then there are annual license fees, which vary depending on what kind of license you're going for.
Can you give us an idea of what those annual fees look like?
Sure. For B2C licenses covering casino games, sports betting, and player versus player games, the annual fee is €25,000. And then for controlled skill games, it's €10,000.
Okay, so it's a sizable investment, but I imagine the potential returns in a market like this could make it worthwhile.
Yeah, that's the calculation a lot of operators making. But you also have to remember there are gaming taxes based on your revenue, and the rates can vary depending on the type of license and how much revenue you're bringing in.
So even with, attractive tax rates, it seems like the Maltese government is still bringing in a significant amount of money from this industry.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In 2019 alone, the gaming industry contributed over $80 million to the Maltese government, just from compliance fees, license fees, and those gaming taxes.
That's impressive. But beyond just the financial side, why is the Malta gaming license so sought after? I mean, why should our listeners care about this particular license?
It's not just about having a license, it's about having the MGA license, which is like a global stamp of approval. It symbolizes trust, reliability, and adherence to a really strict regulatory framework, which in this industry is huge.
So it's about reputation and credibility, just as much as legality.
Exactly, and that translates into tangible benefits, like market access, for example. The MGA license is widely recognized across Europe, so it opens up opportunities for operators to expand their reach.
Okay, I get that, but what about countries that have their own gaming regulations? Does a Maltese license give them access to those markets too?
Sometimes, yes. A prime example is the UK. They have their own gambling commission, but the MGA is what they call whitelisted jurisdiction.
So a company with an MGA license can actually operate in the UK legally.
That's right. They can offer their services, advertise in the UK. It's a huge market for the industry, so it's a big advantage.
Yeah, like a 2-for-1 deal. But I bet this kind of market access comes with some serious oversight. What happens if someone tries to operate without a license in Malta?
Oh, the MGA takes compliance very, very seriously. The penalties for operating without a license are no joke, like hefty fines, even potential imprisonment. I mean, in some cases, they can shut down websites or, even physical locations.
Wow, so that's serious. You don't want to mess around with that. Can you tell us a bit more about the actual application process? Like, what does it take to get one of these Malta gaming licenses?
Well, it's a multi-stage process, and it starts with something they call the fit and proper test.
Fit and proper sounds intense.
It is. They really want to make sure that only reputable and capable operators get these licenses. So they do a deep dive into the applicant's business plan, their financial stability, even background checks on key personnel.
So they're trying to weed out any bad actors or companies that might not be able to handle the responsibility of having a license.
Exactly. They want to protect both the players and the reputation of the Maltese gaming industry as a whole.
So what kind of information do they have to provide for this fit and proper test?
A lot. It's a pretty extensive process. They need a detailed business plan outlining their proposed gaming operations, who their target market is, their marketing strategies, and of course, detailed financial projections. And then they look into the applicant's financial history, making sure they've got sound financial management and stability.
Right. So it's not enough to have a good idea. You got to prove you can actually do it responsibly.
Absolutely. And then there are the background checks. The MGA digs into the personal and professional histories of all the key people involved, like directors, shareholders, senior management.
Wow, they really leave no stone unturned.
Right. They're making sure that everyone involved is trustworthy and has a clean record. Transparency and integrity are super important.
Okay, so let's say a company passes the fit and proper test. What's next?
Then it's on to operational and legal requirements. This is where the MGA gets into the nitty-gritty of how the company is going to operate. Everything from company registration documents, articles of association, the terms and conditions for players, gaming policies, operating procedures, everything.
I can imagine that's a mountain of paperwork.
It is. They need to make sure that the whole setup is compliant with Maltese law and meets their standards. And a big part of this stage is proving that the company has enough money in reserve. The minimum capital requirements depend on the type of license they're going for.
Can you give us an example of what those capital requirements might be?
Sure. So for a Class 1 license, which covers casino games, the minimum is $100,000. Same for Class 2, which is for sports betting. Then Class 3 and 4, which are for peer-to-peer games and controlled skill games. The minimum is a little lower, $40,000.
So the bar is high financially. It makes sense to make sure only serious players are entering the market.
Right. This financial scrutiny protects players, protects the industry, and it helps maintain Malta's reputation as a well-regulated jurisdiction.
Okay, so fit and proper, then the operational and legal checks. What's the final hurdle?
The last stage is the system review. So once an application is approved in principle, the company has to set up their gaming operation in a technical environment. Servers, software, payment systems, everything they need to run an online casino or sportsbook.
So it goes from theory to practice. They need to show they can actually build a functioning platform that's secure and compliant.
Yes, and this review isn't done internally. They bring in an independent systems auditor who's been approved by the MGA, and this auditor goes through everything, the infrastructure security protocols, data protection measures, and make sure they're meeting the MGA's technical standards.
So the MGA is really hands-on in making sure everything is high quality and compliant at every step.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Their thoroughness is a big reason why the Malta gaming license is so respected, and only after they pass the system review do they actually get the 10-year license.
10 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing the oversight doesn't just end there.
You're right. Even with a 10-year license, they're subject to regular compliance audits throughout that whole period. So the MGA is constantly monitoring them to make sure they're following the rules. It's an ongoing thing.
Wow. So a real commitment to keeping those standards high.
Yeah. And that's why the Malta gaming license is so valuable. It's a sign of trust, reliability, and commitment to responsible gaming. It tells players and the industry that this is an operator they can trust.
Like a badge of honor in the gaming world. But we haven't talked much about Malta itself. We've discussed the regulations and the process and the benefits. But what about the impact of all this on Malta as a country?
That's a great point. The gaming industry isn't just some abstract thing in Malta. It's really intertwined with their economic success, and it's had a big impact on their society, too.
So it's not just about bringing in international companies. It's about creating opportunities for the Maltese people as well.
Right. The gaming sector is a major contributor to their GDP, and it's a big source of employment.
I'm curious about the actual numbers. How many jobs has this created in Malta?
Oh, it's pretty impressive. Back in 2019, the gaming sector directly employed over 7,000 people full-time. And if you include indirect employment, like in IT marketing professional services, that number goes up to over 11,000. That's like 4.5% of the entire workforce.
Oh, so it's a big part of their economy.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about the types of jobs they're creating, the skills they're developing, and the opportunities for people to build careers in this growing industry.
So is it a wide range of jobs, or is it mostly entry-level positions?
Actually, the gaming industry is pretty diverse when it comes to jobs. It's a specialized field that needs a lot of different skills and expertise. So you have software engineers developing the games, designers creating the visuals, marketing specialists promoting the platforms, customer support, helping players, compliance officers, making sure everything's legal, financial analysts managing the money. It's a lot.
Sounds like a real mix of talent. Are they attracting people from all over the world?
Yeah, Malta's become a real hub for gaming professionals. People are coming from all over Europe and beyond. It's this influx of talent that helps the industry grow and innovate even more.
It's like a positive feedback loop. More talent fuels more growth, which attracts even more talent.
Exactly. And this whole ecosystem is a big reason why Malta is so attractive to gaming operators. They know they can find the skilled people they need to build their businesses there.
So it's the whole package, the regulations, the business environment, the skilled workforce, and this interconnected industry network.
Exactly. It's all those things that have made Malta such a successful gaming jurisdiction. They've created a place where the industry can flourish but still be held to high standards.
We've talked a lot about the MGA and their role, but what about the Maltese government as a whole? How involved are they in all of this?
The Maltese government has been incredibly supportive. They know how important the gaming industry is to their economy, and they've done a lot to help it grow. They have invested in a really strong digital infrastructure to make sure the country has the high-speed internet and connectivity that online gaming needs.
Right, that's essential. It's the foundation for the whole digital economy.
Absolutely, and they've set up educational programs and training initiatives to give the Maltese workforce the skills they need for this industry.
So they're not just relying on bringing in talent, they're developing it at home too.
Exactly. They're investing in the future. And they're also promoting Malta as a global gaming hub, internationally going to conferences, sponsoring events, and building partnerships with other gaming jurisdictions.
It sounds like they're really all in on this industry.
Yeah.
But what about the people of Malta? How do they feel about their country becoming this center for online gaming?
That's a good question, and it's one that definitely causes some debate. The economic benefits are clear, but some people worry about the social impact.
What kind of concerns do they have?
Well, some are worried about problem gambling, especially among young people. They're concerned that with all these gaming companies and ads, it might normalize gambling and lead to addiction.
I can see why that would be a concern. It's something the MGA and the government need to address carefully.
The MGA has really strict responsible gaming regulations like age verification spending limits, and even self-exclusion options for people who need to take a break.
So giving people tools to control their own behavior.
Exactly. And they have to verify ages to prevent underage gambling. They also have to display responsible gaming information on their websites and provide links to support organizations.
Sounds like a comprehensive approach.
It is. And operators can't just go through the motions. They need to actually create a culture of responsible gaming within their organization, train their staff to identify and help players who might be at risk.
It's a big responsibility, but one that benefits everyone in the end.
For sure, a safe and responsible gaming environment is good for players, good for the industry, and good for Malta's reputation.
Okay, so we've talked about game selection, payment processing, responsible gaming. What are some other things operators need to focus on in this competitive landscape?
Marketing and customer support are huge. The MGA has rules about advertising and promotions to make sure they're fair and transparent. So operators need to develop strategies that follow those regulations, but also effectively reach their target audience.
Right, and customer support is crucial for any online business, but especially in gaming, where people might have questions or run into technical problems anytime.
Exactly. They need to have really good customer support channels in different languages and across time zones.
It sounds like building a successful online gaming business in Malta requires regulatory compliance, technical know-how, responsible practices, and understanding what players want.
It's definitely challenging but rewarding for companies that are committed to doing it the right way.
And as we've seen, the Malta Gaming Authority has created a system that tries to level the playing field, help the industry thrive, and protect players, all while maintaining Malta's reputation as a top gaming jurisdiction.
It's a model that a lot of other countries are looking at as the online gaming world grows.
Well, we've taken a pretty deep dive into the world of the Malta gaming license, from its history to the challenges of operating under it.
We've covered the application process, the impact on Malta responsible gaming, and all the things that make this online gaming ecosystem work.
Hopefully this has given you a better understanding of this complex and interesting industry.
And maybe it's even made you want to learn more about the world of online gaming.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world around us. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Malta gaming license. So we've talked about how the MGA works, the whole application process, and even how this industry has impacted Malta itself.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey learning about how Malta has built this system that balances, economic growth with responsible gambling.
Absolutely. But as we mentioned before the break, just getting that MGA license is just the beginning. It's like getting your driver's license. You can legally drive, but you still need to learn how to, actually navigate the roads.
I like that analogy. Getting the license is step one. The real work begins when they actually have to build a successful online gaming business within Malta's rules.
So let's get into that. What happens after a company gets the MGA's approval? What are some of the first things they need to consider as they get their platform up and running?
Well, one of the most important things is game selection. And the software providers, the MGA is very strict. They require operators to use certified and compliant game software from providers that they trust. This makes sure everything is fair and transparent for players.
So they can't just pick any game they think will be popular. They have to work with providers that meet the MGA's standards.
Right. And then they have to think about who their target market is and adjust their offerings based on that. Even though an MGA license gives them access to a lot of markets, each country has its own, preferences and regulations.
So understanding those differences is really important if they want to succeed.
Definitely. And then there's the whole issue of payment processing. The MGA has a lot of rules about how player funds have to be handled securely and transparently. Operators have to choose payment providers they can trust and make sure their systems are strong and can prevent fraud.
It seems like security and trust are super important in this industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Players need to know that their money and information are safe. And that leads us to another big thing, responsible gaming.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier when we were discussing the social impact of all this.
Yeah.
How do operators actually put responsible gaming measures in place on their platforms?
The MGA requires a few specific things. Operators have to provide ways for players to set limits, on how much they can deposit, how much they can wager. And they even need to have self-exclusion options for players who feel like their gambling is becoming a problem.
So they're giving players the tools to control their own behavior.
Exactly. And they have to have strong systems to check ages to prevent minors from gambling. And it's not enough to just have these features in place. They need to create a culture of responsible gaming and train their staff to recognize and help players who might be at risk.
So it's more than just checking boxes.
It is. It's a real responsibility, but in the end, it makes things better for everyone. A safe and responsible gaming environment is better for players, better for the industry, and better for Malta's reputation.
Okay, so we've covered game selection, payments, responsible gaming. What other big things should operators focus on as they try to, make it in this competitive world?
Marketing and customer support are huge. The MGA has specific rules about advertising and promotions to make sure everything's above board. So operators have to come up with strategies that follow those rules, but also, actually attract players.
Right. And customer support is so important in any online business, but especially in gaming, where people might have questions or tech issues anytime.
Definitely, they need to have responsive and helpful customer support that's available in a bunch of languages and across different time zones.
So it sounds like building a successful online gaming business in Malta is pretty complex. There's regulatory compliance, technical expertise, responsible practices, and you have to really understand what players need.
It is. It's definitely challenging, but also rewarding for those companies that are committed to doing things the right way.
And as we've seen throughout this whole deep dive, the Malta Gaming Authority has created a system that's really about fairness.
Yeah.
They want to help the industry grow while also protecting players and making sure Malta stays a trusted place for gaming.
A lot of other countries are looking at their model as online gaming continues to expand and evolve.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
We've gone deep into the world of the Malta gaming license, from its history to the ins and outs of actually running a successful gaming operation.
We've talked about the application process, the impact on Malta, the focus on responsible gaming, and all the things that make this industry so unique.
We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this world.
And maybe even sparked an interest to learn even more about the world of online gaming.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.